So thank you to everyone for joining us today on this virtual Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust meetup. Today we have a discussion around software supply chain attacks and defenses for Web3. And we have our speaker today, Martin Monperrus. And with that, again, we welcome your input and questions and comments. If you have anything you'd like to share or ask, feel free to type in the Zoom chat or use the raise hand feature. And we, again, hope this is the discussion. And with that, Martin, please take it away.
Thanks a lot, David. I assume you can hear me very well, and you can see my slides. This is very good. This is Martin Monperrus speaking. So here is my setup. So I see my slide, I see the chat. So if you type something in the chat, I will see it. And also, I will stop at least 2 or 3 times during the talk to take live questions. So I'm happy to take questions. When I give a talk, I like to have it interactive. So I'm very happy to take questions the few moments I will ask for. I will be very happy to have your feedback and question. Good. So yeah, my name is Martin Monperrus. I'm with KLEH, which is the largest technological university in Scandinavia, in Stockholm, Sweden, and with a company called mab.xyz. So yeah, Good. So I'm professor at KLEH and with my team. So we are based in Stockholm. What we do is that we write research papers. This is software research, so we develop open source research prototypes, and we also create tech companies. So we cover the spectrum of.
Hey, Martin, you're going to have to get close to the microphone or turn your volume up. Nobody can hear you.
Okay, it was nice before. Check, microphone check. Is that better?
Yeah, that's louder. Yeah.
Is that good? Good enough? I continue. It's good? Good. All right, thanks. Yeah, okay, good. Thanks, Mike. Good, very good. Right. So today we're going to talk about software supply chain attacks on crypto. And if you have to leave this talk very soon, the TLDR is that, the whole crypto and Web3 ecosystem is as weak as the weakest link of its software supply chain. And I really mean here the metaphor literally. If you take an iron chain, the chain is as strong as the weakest link always. And it's the very same in crypto. And you see why we see attacks moving over time, because they always go to the weakest link of the chain. Well, so let's start with grounding this talk in Bybit. So Bybit is a crypto exchange. And in February, it was hacked. And it didn't make mainstream media. Yet it was the largest theft in human history. So there was no other theft in the world in the history with so much money. So Bybit was 1.5 billion. The previous one was Saddam Hussein going to the Central Bank of Kuwait with lots of trucks and getting all the money in the Central Bank of Kuwait, and it was 800 millions. This is the largest theft in human history. And why is that the largest theft? It's because it's a pure digital theft. And so, digital money, you can go with all the money in a single transaction. So how did that happen? How did we build a software stack and an operational stack where you could do that? Well, it's a combination of factors. So let's do a quick briefing of the Bybit attack. So first, it was a software supply chain attack on a core developer of Gnosis Safe, a multi-sig wallet, through a package manager. So somebody with some advanced social engineering convinced a core developer to do a pip install on their machine. And on their machine, of course, it installed a compromised Python package. But this compromised Python package was not obviously malicious. Everything was fine, except for within the software package, there was a piece of deserialization code which downloaded the actual malicious payload from the internet again. So it's already a two-leg attack on the core developer machine. Once on the core developer machine, the goal of the attackers were to be able to tamper with the JavaScript code of the multi-sig wallet. And for that, they had to go slowly. It took them a couple of days to compromise the AWS cloud where the production files of the safe wallet were hosted. Now they had access to the production system. They could compromise it. And since nobody checks on a daily basis that the code is the right one, it was completely under the radar. Nobody saw that something really off was in this piece of JavaScript code. Then later on, so there was no safeguards on the software, on the safe wallet part. And then later on, the attacker exploited a very bad UX of the multisig, where basically you sign a hash, and you don't really know what you're signing. And that's the problem for all signers. So even if it's a multisig, 3 out of 5 or even 9 out of 11, you don't care. Everybody signs the same hash, which is a broken hash. And at the very last leg of the attack, there was a smart contract callback. So the attackers also wrote a piece of code in a callback of smart contract. This one was not broken. It's not a vulnerability per se. But we'll come back to this later. Having callbacks in a smart contract infrastructure is dangerous because basically you give control to somebody that you don't control. So that's Bybit. It's the largest theft in human history. And at the end, when the attack is successful, the success criteria of the attack is very clear. It's going away with 1.5 billion. So what's a software supply chain here? I first want to define a bit. So the software supply chain is a set of all dependencies and tools used to build, deploy, and run a software system. So first and foremost is the dependencies. So Maven, NPM, PyPy, and so on. It's also the compiler, everything in the build, in the core build, the compiler, the linker, the minifier. It's also places where you can attack the system. In the pipelines, in your CI/CD pipeline, your GitHub actions are part of your software supply chain, and also your deployment runtime. And at the end, when you have a software system, it's it's an excerpt of a real software supply chain. It's a lot of components, and when you are at the bottom here, well, you have to reuse all of this. Software development is heavily based on reuse today, and that's good. That's good for productivity. That's good for quality also. But it's very bad with respect to attacks because it's impossible for the guy at the very bottom here to control everything which goes in any of those cells here, any of those components. And yet it's a huge attack surface. So here we see there are a couple of perhaps 80 dependencies. In a real software systems, and if you count all kinds of dependencies, you get thousands of dependencies. And the attackers today will never attack the target system. They will attack a dependency of the target system. They will take control of the dependency first, and then this will propagate to the target system. And well, if you go look at this in the context of a Web3 architecture, so this is a Web3 architecture. So a Web3 architecture, there is basically the infrastructure layer, so the hardcore blockchain with blockchain nodes at the bottom. Typically written in Go, Rust, Java. In the middle, we have the smart contract layer with everything which is on chain, so all the contracts basically. And at the top, we have the off-chain application layer, so all the wallets, all the UI of protocols, and so on. And this is software everywhere here. So if you need to use this system, you have to build this system with some development tools, NPM, Maven, your compiler, you name it. So that's the big picture. And basically, you can attack a Web3 system. You can attack a blockchain system at all possible levels. And as you remember, you will always attack the weakest one. So for quite some time, and still today, you do attack the smart contract layer because it's very effective when you're successful. But if it gets very strong, if it gets strong enough, the weakest link might become the off-chain application layer, which is what happened in Bybit. The weakest link was on the off-chain part, so at the top of this figure. Any question about this figure? Go for it in the chat, because it's important for the rest. The rest of this talk is really going into the risk at the infra first, then at the smart contract layer, and then at the off-chain layer, and then the development layer. So we really cover the whole spectrum of attacks that you can have. Yeah, go for a question, Ariane.
So I was following what you were saying about the largest theft and how they used pip install package manager, right, for Python.
Mhm.
So I was curious between that and the slider showing us right now, was it, did they download a malicious package or did they corrupt the actual package installing software itself? Like, how did that
No,
take place?
they pushed a compromised version on PyPy directly, and then the developer, the core dev, simply did pip install and downloaded from PyPy the compromised package.
Okay, so they installed, they made a compromised version
Yeah,
and then the developer ran it, downloading the malicious code.
exactly.
Okay.
And today, on a daily basis, there are tons of malicious packages pushed on any single package manager. Quite a fair number are caught either by the core infra or by some security companies which monitor the package registries. But many of them are not caught because it's very easy to obfuscate your malicious code.
Yeah, makes sense. And then my other question was then how does that play into the diagram you're showing us now? Because I was a little confused in terms of connecting the two.
Well, so here so in the Bybit attack, in the development layer, you can also consider that you have the developer machines.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is what was compromised. So the laptop of a developer was compromised, and then giving access to the environment hosting the off-chain layer. So it's really an interplay between the dev layer at the right-hand side here and the off-chain at the top of the figure.
Okay, so the development layer, that being compromised, then basically compromise the other three layers on the other
Correct.
side, which is
Exactly. It
okay.
propagates, it infected the rest. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Xavier, yeah, CI/CD, it's part of the dev layer. I put them in the dev for the sake of this presentation. Thanks a lot for the questions. I proceed. Right. And yeah, Bybit is not a unique example. So we've been consolidating a list of all software supply chain attack on crypto, and DYDX, social swap, ledger, wallets, so everybody has been attacked. And that's normal because the outcome of a successful attack is direct money on the bank account of the attacker. Right, so let's start with blockchain infra supply chain risk. So we want to look at the nodes. What happens if we can compromise the node of a blockchain system? And here we take this example of a mass slashing event. So this is a distributed system here to the left. We have a distributed system producing blocks. And if an attacker wants to tear down the whole blockchain, one way to do is that since many nodes, so here, let's say, look at the red nodes, all the red nodes here, are the same implementation, so they share the same bugs and the same vulnerabilities. So if the attacker wants to tear down the whole system, they have to target a vulnerability which is shared across all participants. And then what happens after a successful attack is that you actually kill all the red participants, and you have and in proof of stake protocol, everybody, all the red nodes here lose their stake, which is a 32 ETH today. And if you have a full monoculture here, you can imagine that the attacker can, by targeting a single node, can tear down all participants in the distributed systems, all participants in the blockchain network, which is a huge attack. So the solution to this, and you might say, yeah, this doesn't happen. Yeah, actually, you can do that because that's still the software supply chain problem. Those nodes have tons of dependencies. So in this paper, we looked at the dependencies of Besu and Teku, which are written in Java, and they are in the hundreds. So if you want to tear down all the participants of a Besu-based network, you can target any of their dependencies. So something you can do. What you can do to counteract that? Martin, what you're saying is that, okay, if it's a monoculture, if everybody runs the same code, we can break everything with a single bug. So the solution is to have multiple implementations in the system. So that's something called software diversity. So if we have software diversity in the blockchain system, a supply chain attack on a node will not tear down the whole network. And that's something that we are researching at the moment together with Javier and Johan. It's a project funded by the Ethereum Foundation where we look at something called verifiable client diversity. Here's the idea. We want that blockchain nodes always give a proof of the code which they are running. So at the top here, the validators here, when they produce, when they do an action, such as creating a block or testing a block, they always send a proof. And you know, if every node sends a proof of which code they are running, it means that you can have a verifiable measurement of the node distribution. You can have a verifiable measurement that we have 4 nodes red, 2 nodes green, and 1 node gray. And this can't be tampered with, this can't be forged. So that's very good. And as soon as we have this, what we can do is that we can reward the minority clients. So we can give more money in the protocol to the green or the gray here. And by virtue of economic incentives, we would get much less monoculture as what we have today. So here, by introducing this idea of verifiable software diversity, we are able to target a class of risk related to blockchain nodes. Any question?
I have a quick one.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between a validator and a verifier, and how do they interact with the network?
So it's a good question, actually. The validator participates to the is the one participating to the core. So it's okay. It's a very good question. So it's 2 roles in the protocol. So one role is to create to validate blocks. So to validate the fact that all rules of the protocol are satisfied. The role of the verifier is to verify that the proofs are not forged. And so you might have the same person having both roles, but it could also be different persons. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, that helped a lot. Thank you so much.
Can you?
How is the attestation created? That's a very good question. So that's written in the white paper at the bottom here. Right now we are looking at 2 different things. We are looking at zero knowledge virtual machines. So ZK, in particular, RISC-0. So when you are able to run part of your blockchain node into a RISC-0 infrastructure, you actually produce proofs of the identity of the code being run. And we have also a running experiment right now with the TEEs, Trusted Execution Environments, to do the same thing with different assumptions. So to answer your question, the attestation is created using either ZKVM or TEEs.
Or what, sorry?
TEEs, Trusted Execution Environments. So here what I'm saying is that if you have a full monoculture, you can break the whole system by attacking a single dependency. If you have diversity, you can't do that anymore. How a different client type creates a different attestation. So different client type have different code. So by definition, the attestation will be different. Does that answer your question, or I don't understand it? Good. I proceed slowly. So you recall my figure here, we have 4 risks. And now I just told you briefly how we could attack the infrastructure layer. And we could benefit from the fact that it could be a monoculture at the bottom. And if you break a single node, if you find a single vulnerability, you can break the whole distributed system. Yet this layer is pretty strong, especially for highly decentralized blockchains such as Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's still a weak point for those blockchains where you have only a handful of validators. where it's not only a monoculture, but it's a monoculture and only a few validators, so it's weaker. Let's move on to smart contracts here. So smart contract supply chain risks. So you remember my figure with these trees of dependencies, and now you can think of whether smart contracts have the same thing. So do they have dependencies? Especially at runtime. So do smart contracts call other smart contracts? That's what we looked at with Rafina and Monica in this paper on chain analysis of smart contract dependency risks on Ethereum. So we looked at the Ethereum and we measured the number of smart contracts involved in a single transaction. So an easy smart contract, an easy transaction, you call a smart contract and that's it. So it's a one. But perhaps you call a smart contract which calls another smart contract, and then it becomes a two. And if you have a tree of smart contracts, it could be 5, 10, and so on. So now we measure the number of smart contracts per transaction. So already in 2015, the median was 2. So that's the red bars here. And if you look at the red bars, the red bars keep increasing from 2 to 3 to 4. So today, on median, on average, loosely speaking, a transaction already consists of 4 different smart contracts interacting together. And if we look at the outlier, the outliers, the top here goes into the 100 or 1,000 smart contracts in single transactions. So basically today, this graph demonstrates the whole vision of the Ethereum founders that you can have composable smart contracts, permissionless composable smart contracts. And the more composition you have, the more smart contracts you have. So far, so good. How is that a problem for security? Well, because in some cases, you actually give lots of power to the contracts you call. So if your smart contract depends on 100 other smart contracts, then any of them which is compromised could compromise the whole transaction. So yes, in 2016, that was the denial of service on Ethereum. So that's we see the composition is happening, and why is composition a problem is because I'm talking about Ethereum tech here right now. In Ethereum, you can call smart contracts in 3 different ways, with regular call, static call, and delegate call. Okay, static call in blue is in red. Static call in red is fine. This is guaranteed to be side effect free, so there is no real risk here. The big problem on this slide is the yellow part. So let's look at, so each circle is a year. So the inner circle is 2015, then 2016, 2017, 2018. And we see that the yellow increases over year, which means over time on Ethereum, we see more and more delegate call. And what is a delegate call? It's a call where you use another smart contract with your funds, with your tokens. So it's like giving the keys of your house to a stranger and say, yeah, go and do whatever you want in my house. So this is what a delegate call is. Which means that if you start to have a smart contract dependencies with delegate calls, what it means that you basically, you are subject to an attack on any dependent of your smart contracts, exactly as on PyPy or exactly as a regular smart contract attack. And this happens, then if you have a malicious update, you have your funds lost. So that's a real issue. Hard to, yeah, that's a real issue. So let's proceed here. The thing is that actually, then we looked at the actual smart contracts, which are a lot dependent upon. So here a list of 4: CoinTool, Bitrex, OpenSea, and Bitstamp. So let's look at the third row here, OpenSea registry. So it's a contract which is depended upon by millions of NFTs, hundreds of thousands of NFTs, and it's a mutable contract. It's an upgradable proxy, which means that if somebody at OpenSea get compromised, you can potentially compromise all NFTs depending on the registry because it's mutable. So what I'm saying here is that if you start to have the combination of smart contract composition with proxies, then you have an explosive mix. It means that a problem in your smart contract dependencies can basically threaten your funds. And that's even worse because actually we looked at who deploys smart contracts. And it turns out that 11 deployer addresses have deployed 50% of all contracts on chain. Which is 20 million contracts on Ethereum mainnet. So 20 million contracts were deployed by 11 addresses. It's not a problem per se if everything is immutable and permissionless, but lots of those contracts, the deployer address either has proxy rights on the subcontracts or admin rights in the subcontracts. They have lots of powers. And same thing, you can say, yeah, Martin, but those deployers can't be compromised. This argument doesn't hold because it's the same argument that Bybit can't be compromised. All keys get compromised at some point. So what you want is that you never want to have your security on top of the security assumption of your private keys. You want to have security on top of the code, of the immutability of the code which has been deployed. Any questions so far? So you recall I have 4 boxes in my main figure. So the infrastructure layer. So you can attack the Web3 system by the infrastructure. You can attack the Web3 system so by a dependency of the infrastructure. You can attack a Web3 system by a dependency of the smart contract. This is what I'm looking at. Now let's look at the off-chain supply chain risks. So that's the Bybit attack again in a single transaction. So Bybit, lots of things happen in the wallet. So after having looked at the dependencies of the nodes and the dependencies of the smart contract, let's look at the dependencies of the wallets. So in this work, we looked at the dependency of MetaMask. And MetaMask has thousands of dependencies. So it's a lot. So lots of targets for attackers. So it's really hard to protect. Plus, many of those dependencies, it's really hard to come back to the actual source code. So there are 20. So looking at the last, we can look at the last column here, version 12. In version 12, in the dependency tree of MetaMask, there were 47 packages where we don't even have an address for the source code. 15 where the address is 404. 400 where we have a GitHub repo. We have a tag or a SHA, but the tag doesn't exist. So we can't really go back to the source code, and we have other problems. So that's again a dependency problem on the wallet side. So you can have mitigation such that ban opaque dependencies in CI, so to forbid the presence of dependencies without source code. But it's only partial mitigation. You also need something called reproducible builds. So once you get a link to the code and a link to the actual package deployed in the registry, you can make sure that the link is valid, that the transformation for the code to the binary is the same. That's something that has been invented more or less by Bitcoin in 2010, done today in gigs, and Vivi has worked to do that for Geth. So reproducible builds is a way to start to control where something has been tampered with. In the context of the Bybit attack again, if somebody would have constantly rebuilt from source the safe code and compared against what has been deployed on AWS, they would have identified the problem. They would have identified that somebody has tampered with the wallet code in this case. So reproducible build is part of the solution for tampering with off-chain code. There is an even sneakier problem, which is a trust-in-trust attack, where the attack happens through the compiler. So just imagine that you have, your code at the bottom here, bitcoin.c, which is compiled through a compromised compiler, tcc.xyz. In this case, even though the code itself so cryptocurrency is not compromised, the result, the app that you deploy in production is compromised. So that's called a trust attack, and you can generalize this attack to anything in your build pipeline, in your build system. That's the same concept, that you will be able to compromise one step going from source to what's deployed. So that's the attack. The solution is something called diverse double compilation. So DDC, what's the idea? The idea is that you want to compile here in the vertical pram.source. You want to compile it. The idea is that if you want to check that compiler source here has not been is not tampering with the compilation of source, you compile it with two different compilers, and then you compile the program source twice, and it should give you the very same binary. So this is a very strong protection against compiler-based attack. The problem, which is hard to have it in production, is that it requires to have two different compatible compilers, and that it should be integrated into the mainstream CI/CD pipelines of compilers themselves. But diverse double compilation is a valid solution. And here you recall this solution of having a diversity of node operators. In general, diversity is a very strong solution to software security attack, because it gives you a way to compare to compare the outcome of any step in your build and to see what's going on. Question? Good. All right. Good. So yeah, in MAB we are working on that, on identifying software security risks and setting up defenses, starting with the risks, the risk part of smart contracts. As we discussed, the fact that smart contracts are composed and mutable is a time bomb that we are assessing on a daily basis. So now comes the final side of my talk. So you remember we have four boxes. So off-chain, smart contract, infra, and development layer. All of them can be subject to a dependency attack. So in conclusion, software supply chain risks are critical, so they can happen at any level of a Web3 system: blockchain infra, smart contract, off-chain NIPs, dev tools, and so on and so forth. And what I presented today is potential mitigation for that. So reproducible builds is good. Attestations is good. So build attestation, blockchain attestation, block attestation is really good. We need advanced dependency monitoring and verification, and we need software diversity. And if you start to combine all of them, we protect the Web3 architecture, the Web3 systems against software supply chain attacks. I already shared a lot of papers, and you can contact us at MAB. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to take questions.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
So, would you say overall when you talk about, let's say, supply chain risks, right? And you listed four different things, but which one tends to which area tends to have the most breaches? Is it the dev tools, the smart contract areas? Like,
So it evolves over time. As I told you, it's the attackers will attack the weakest in any system. For today, my gut feeling, okay, I have to get this here. Today, the infra layer is quite strong. Today, most of the attacks happen either at the smart contract layer of the off-chain application layer. The off-chain starts to be the weakest point. The dev layer attacks are extremely expensive to set up. So you really need you need to be able to compromise a dev tool. So this happens. We do see software suppression attacks on CI/CD. There was one recently a month ago on change lines. So the attacker compromised a GitHub action, and they wanted to target Coinbase itself. So the goal was to target Coinbase, but the attack was detected fast enough such that the attack didn't succeed. So we only started to see the beginning of the attack.
yeah,
But attackers do also attack the dev layer, for sure. They do it.
yeah. Understandable. Thank you.
Question in the chat from Charles. Have you estimated how much this would cost in gas for a small, medium, large-size project in terms of number of reproducible builds? Okay, so reproducible builds typically is not in gas because you don't build on-chain. So you don't pay in gas for reproducible build. That's not, this mitigation doesn't cost you gas. No, your question is potentially very interesting because if you assume that you build on-chain, so if you implement a compiler in Solidity, let's say, to run on-chain, then the reproducible build itself becomes verifiable, and then you have to pay for gas. So your question is excellent, Charles, but I've never seen yet a real-world compiler implemented in Solidity running on-chain verifiably. Right. Any other question? How does traditional enterprise solutions such as message queue fit into that? Thanks, Pedram. So yeah, it's you could completely compromise a message queue. So it's so yes, you could compromise access to message queue and compromise the system through that. I'm not aware of any Web3 attack on that, but your question is about traditional enterprise. So yeah, in terms of Web2 software suppression attack, you could compromise the system through the message queue itself. It's a very powerful enterprise system. So yeah, completely agree. It's part of the attack surface. One mitigation, at least for forensic, is to have a fully auditable message queue. So to log all messages with integrity. But I'm not aware of any work on this. This is an interesting idea. You're welcome. Yeah, Anuj, how did blockchain infrastructure remain intact during a cyber attack? So I like this question here. So blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, have been invented to be something. Have been invented to be one of the most resilient distributed systems in the world. This is really the core goal, and that happens through being distributed and through being distributed over operators. So, if you only have a distributed system, but all nodes are run by Google, yes, it's distributed. So but you don't get distribution over a takeover of Google by the American government. So blockchain solves both the hardware distribution, potentially the country distribution, and the operator distribution. Yet we've never seen so far, a major catastrophic event where the whole blockchain is subject to the attack. So yeah, basically the blockchain has never been deployed in a war zone, and so we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen. So we've seen small attacks, and like DDoS attack in 2016, which was very early. So today we haven't seen yet a nation state-wide infrastructure attack on the network itself. So in theory, it works well because this is the best system. So it's been designed for that. In practice, we've never seen a large-scale catastrophic attack on the whole system. Pedram, I'm not sure to know what you referred to by MCP, so please write in the chat. Laiho, how does testing or what kind of testing done to optimally prevent these attacks? Okay, that's a very good point. So testing, yes, testing is essential. Testing is essential for quality assurance. What we've seen in Bybit, like if you only do, the code of safe was good and it was perfectly tested offline. So you really need testing in depth up to production testing, live testing. So what I said about Bybit is that yes, the code of safe is very good, but we also need to test that in production, the code is still the one that you expect to have and it still works perfectly. So you must have an end-to-end testing procedure where you test offline, you test in CI, you test in production always. So in a high-stake system like Web3, you must test also in production. So you should spend some time of your testing budget and your QA budget on testing in production. So MCP, yeah, sure. So MCP is completely part of the attack surface of an AI system, so which is not typically in a Web3 architecture. But yes, in an AI-enabled software system, you have to consider the attack surface of your MCP components. Yes, for sure. Thanks a lot for your questions. Do you have any other questions? So yeah, we have a number of papers. You can follow us on social media on this work. We will keep working on this topic of supply chain risk for Web3 and the mitigations in the coming years. So if you like that, let me know. Good. So thanks a lot for joining this call all over the world, over many different time zones, early, late. I think we are done.
Great. Well, thank you, Martin, and thank you to everyone for dialing in. Yeah, this was very interesting. And the recording will be on YouTube, so feel free to check it out there. And Martin, if you can send me the slides, I can send the recording and the slides to everyone who signed up, because we always get questions about if we will share those. So
Very good. Thanks a
great.
lot, everybody. Thanks a lot, David.
Thanks, everyone.